The rumors had been circling for weeks before the two women ever stepped into the same cage, and anyone who had followed the buildup knew this was never going to be a quiet, forgettable fight. Dakota Ditcheva had already built a reputation as one of the most feared rising talents in the flyweight division. A fighter whose blend of Muay Thai precision and relentless composure had turned her into the kind of name that made opponents think twice before signing on the dotted line. Her rise had not been an accident. It had been built fight by fight, through performances that combined technical brilliance with a kind of quiet menace that made even hardened veterans uneasy. But this time, the opponent across from her wasn't thinking twice. She was talking loud, carrying herself with the kind of swagger that suggested she believed the hype around Dakota was overblown, that the undefeated record was more marketing than substance, and that she was about to be the one to expose it in front of the entire world. What she didn't understand, what so many before her had failed to understand, was that disrespecting Dakota Ditcheva before the bell rings has always been a dangerous gamble. Because Dakota doesn't just want to win those fights. She wants to make a statement so loud that the disrespect becomes impossible to repeat. So decisive that it echoes through every future contract negotiation and every future opponent's training camp from the outside. It looked like a classic trap fight, the kind of matchup where a confident challenger tries to get inside her opponent's head before throwing a single strike, hoping that words alone might do some of the damage that fists would later attempt. The trash talk wasn't subtle. It wasn't playful banter meant to sell tickets or generate a few extra headlines. It carried an edge, a genuine belief that Dakota's poise was a mask for weakness, that her calm demeanor in interviews was something that could be cracked once the pressure of the cage set in and the lights grew hot enough to expose any hidden fragility. Fans watched the pre-fight exchanges with a mixture of excitement and disbelief, wondering whether this challenger truly understood what she was stepping into, or whether she was simply playing a role that would collapse the moment reality arrived. Dakota, for her part, didn't respond with fireworks. She responded the way she always does, with a quiet certainty that unsettles people far more than shouting ever could. She simply said she was the queen of the division, not as a boast, but as a fact she intended to prove with her fists. A statement delivered with the calm of someone who had already seen the outcome playing out in her mind long before fight night arrived as the days ticked closer to the event. The narrative around the fight only intensified. Journalists asked Dakota directly about the comments being made against her, searching for a reaction, a flicker of frustration, anything that might suggest the words had landed somewhere beneath the surface. Instead, she offered composure that bordered on unsettling, the kind of restraint that made seasoned analysts nod knowingly, aware that fighters who talk the most before a fight are often the ones who have the least left to say once it begins. Meanwhile, the challenger continued building her case in interviews, insisting that Dakota had never truly been tested, that her opposition had been carefully selected, and that this fight would finally reveal cracks that had been papered over by hype and marketing. It was bold talk, and to some degree it worked in generating buzz, drawing eyes toward a contest that might otherwise have been viewed as a routine title defense rather than a genuine crossroads moment. When the cage door finally closed, the energy in the arena shifted instantly. There was a nervousness in the air that only exists when everyone senses a reckoning is about to unfold, a feeling that something more than just a win or loss was on the line. Dakota came out exactly as she always does, patient and calculating, reading her opponent's rhythm before committing to anything reckless, treating the opening moments less like a fight and more like an interrogation designed to extract every weakness her opponent possessed. The challenger, still carrying the confidence of her pre-fight words, tried to press forward, tried to prove that her disrespect had been earned rather than assumed. For a few fleeting moments, it seemed like she might actually create problems, throwing with intention, testing Dakota's reactions, searching for any sign of hesitation that might validate everything she had promised in the buildup. But that hesitation never came. Instead, Dakota began dismantling her piece by piece, using footwork to cut off angles, using feints to draw out predictable reactions, and using her educated hands to find gaps that most fighters spend years trying to develop the eye to see, let alone the speed to exploit in real time. What followed wasn't just a beating, it was an education. A live demonstration of the gap between confidence and competence that so often gets blurred in the lead up to a big fight. Every strike that landed carried a message. Every combination flowed with the kind of purpose that separates elite fighters from fighters who simply talk like elites without ever having earned the right. The challenger's confidence, so loud just days before, began visibly draining from her expression as the pressure mounted and the reality of the moment set in. Dakota's punches weren't wild or desperate. They were precise, timed with a patience that made the entire performance look almost effortless, which is often the most terrifying quality a striker can possess, because it suggests total control rather than fleeting opportunity. Body shots landed with bad intentions, forcing her opponent to second-guess every movement, while combinations to the head kept her constantly off balance and unable to find any rhythm of her own. The gap between the woman who talked before the fight and the woman being outclassed inside it grew wider with every passing second, until it became almost uncomfortable to watch. A public unraveling of everything that had been promised in the weeks leading up to that night. By the time the finish arrived, there was no controversy, no debate about whether it had been close. No argument left for anyone still clinging to the pre-fight predictions. Dakota closed the show with the kind of clinical finishing sequence that has become her signature, a blend of speed, accuracy, and fight IQ that left absolutely no room for argument among fans, commentators, or even the challenger's own corner. The referee's intervention felt less like a rescue and more like a formality, because everyone watching already knew where the fight was headed the moment the pressure began building in that second exchange. The crowd erupted, not just because of the finish itself, but because of the story behind it, the satisfaction of watching disrespect meet its consequence in real time, playing out exactly as so many had predicted once the cage door locked and the talking stopped. Dakota didn't celebrate with arrogance. She celebrated with the calm satisfaction of someone who had simply done what she said she would do. Someone who understood that actions inside the cage speak louder than any words spoken before it. No matter how loud those words had been in the aftermath, the conversation shifted immediately. What had been framed as a potential upset, a chance for a bold newcomer to expose weaknesses in a rising star, instead became another chapter in Dakota Ditcheva's growing legend. Another data point in an increasingly compelling case for her as one of the most complete fighters in the division. Analysts who had entertained the challenger's confidence before the fight now spoke about Dakota's composure under provocation, her ability to stay emotionally disciplined even when baited, and her terrifying consistency in turning big fight moments into definitive statements rather than close, competitive battles. For her opponent, the lesson was painful but clear, that talking about Dakota Ditcheva is far easier than actually standing across from her when the cage door locks and the crowd goes silent in anticipation. Disrespect might generate headlines and hype, might sell a few extra tickets and draw a few extra eyes to the broadcast. But in Dakota's world, it always seems to end the same way. With her hand raised and her point proven beyond any reasonable doubt, this wasn't just another win added to an undefeated record. It was a reminder to the entire division that confidence without preparation is a dangerous illusion, and that Dakota Ditcheva continues to punish anyone who mistakes her calm for vulnerability or her patience for hesitation. As her resume grows and the challenges get tougher, as bigger names begin circling the division in search of an opportunity, one truth remains constant. Disrespecting her has become one of the riskiest decisions any fighter in this sport can make. A gamble that history keeps proving does not pay off. What did you think of this performance? And do you believe anyone in the division can truly test Dakota Ditcheva before her reign is over? Drop your predictions in the comments. Let us know who you think should step up next, and if you enjoyed this breakdown. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next fight story.